He had it all: a mansion, a billion-dollar company, respect. But arriving home that day, the sound of a song stopped him cold. In the living room, his daughter Sophia was singing with the cleaner. And in that instant, the millionaire understood what he had truly lost. The black limousine pulled up to the automated gates of the mansion at 7:43 a.m. Carlos didn't even wait for the chauffeur to open the door. He jumped out, phone glued to his ear, closing yet another 8-figure deal before he even stepped inside the house. Confirm the meeting with the Hong Kong investors for 3 p.m. and tell the legal department I want those contracts revised by midday. His voice echoed through the entrance hall as he strode across the Italian marble floor without glancing sideways. 42 years old, CEO of one of the country's biggest tech companies, Carlos had built an empire from nothing. Every second was worth thousands of dollars. Every decision moved fortunes. He was unstoppable. "Daddy," the high-pitched voice came from the stairs. Sophia ran down the steps, her little yellow dress swaying with each bounce. She was 4, with that wide smile of someone who still believed her dad was a superhero. Carlos glanced up from his phone for half a second. "Hi, Princess. Daddy's busy now." He gave a brief wave and turned towards his study. Sophia stopped halfway down the stairs, her smile wilting like a flower without water. Her tiny hands clutched a drawing she'd made, especially for him. A yellow sun, a crooked house, 3 little stick figures. "But I made a drawing for you." Her voice barely reached Carlos's ears, as he was already closing the study door behind him. On the paper, the girl had drawn herself, her dad, and a woman in an apron. Below, in huge, wobbly letters, it read, "My family." Sophia stood there, looking at the closed door. After a few seconds, she slowly descended the rest of the stairs and went to the kitchen, where a woman in a uniform was preparing breakfast. "Mrs. Beatrice, Daddy didn't want to see my drawing again." The head housekeeper sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. She'd worked in that house for 6 years and saw that scene repeat almost every day. "Your dad's very busy, sweetheart. He works hard to give you everything good. But I don't want everything good. I want Daddy." The words came out so pure, so honest, that Beatrice felt a squeeze in her chest. Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. "That must be the new cleaner. Go play in the living room, darling. You'll get it." Sophia shuffled her little feet to the living room, that enormous space full of white sofas where no one ever really sat. She threw herself onto the rug with her scattered toys, dolls, toy cars, imported games. She had everything, except what she truly wanted. At the door, Beatrice opened it to a simple-looking woman. Worn jeans, a plain white top, brown hair tied back in a ponytail. She carried an old shoulder bag, and in her eyes was that mix of determination and weariness of someone fighting for survival every day. "Good morning. I'm Clara. I'm here for the cleaner's position. Come in, dear. I was expecting you." Clara stepped into the house and felt as if she'd entered another universe. The crystal chandelier in the hall, the marble staircases, the paintings on the walls. Everything screamed luxury, power. A world away from the reality she lived in. "The house is big. You'll be responsible for general cleaning, room organization, laundry. We discussed the salary on the phone." "Yes, ma'am. You can count on me. I'll do a good job." Clara needed that job more than anything. A single mum of a 7-year-old boy, she worked in 3 different houses just to afford the rent for a tiny flat in the outer suburbs. But she didn't complain, never had. Life had already taken far more important things from her than material comforts. "You can start with the upstairs bedrooms. I'll show you where the cleaning supplies are." As Beatrice explained the routine, Sophia appeared at the kitchen door, looking at Clara with that typical child's curiosity. The woman smiled at her, a genuine, warm smile. "Hi, little doll. What's your name?" "Sophia. What a beautiful name. I'm Clara. I'll be working here now." "Are you going to live here?" "No, sweetheart. I'll come every morning and leave in the afternoon." Sophia nodded, but kept looking. There was something different about that woman, something in her eyes, a true kindness, not the cold politeness of previous nannies who just did their job and left. The following weeks fell into a mechanical routine. Carlos left before the sun rose and returned when Sophia was already asleep. When they crossed paths in the hallway on weekends, he'd give her a quick pat on the head and keep talking on his phone. The little girl no longer even tried to show him her drawings. Clara, for her part, worked in silence. She cleaned, organized, took care of things, but couldn't help but notice. That enormous mansion was full of everything but what truly mattered. There was no laughter, no conversations, no life. One morning, while cleaning the living room, Clara found Sophia sitting on the floor, surrounded by toys, but playing with none. The little girl just stared at the door of her dad's study, closed as always. "Hi, Sophia. Why aren't you playing? I don't feel like it." Clara stopped what she was doing and sat on the rug beside her. Something in her chest tightened. She knew that look. It was the same look she'd seen in the mirror years ago. "You know what I used to do when I was sad at your age?" Sophia looked at her, curious. "I'd sing. My mum always said music was medicine for any sadness. Do you know how to sing a little bit?" In truth, Clara knew much more than a little bit, but that was a long-buried secret, a dream she'd had to give up when life forced her to choose between art and survival. "Sing for me." Clara hesitated. It had been years since she'd sung for anyone, but she looked at those sad little eyes and couldn't refuse. She started softly, almost whispering, a simple song about birds and flowers. Her voice, even restrained, had something special, a sweetness that soothed, an emotion that touched deep inside. Sophia's eyes widened. She'd never heard anything like it. In the mansion, only classical music played in the background. But this was different. This had soul. "Again, sing again." Clara laughed and sang, and for the first time in weeks, Sophia truly smiled. In his study, Carlos furiously typed on his computer. Reports, spreadsheets, projections, the whole world depended on his decisions. He was important, he was essential, he was alone, but he didn't have time to think about that. He had a company to run, an empire to keep standing. Emotions were a luxury men like him couldn't afford. Outside, unbeknownst to him, something was beginning. Something small, delicate, but powerful. A connection, a bridge being built between two solitary souls through the universal language that heals any pain, music. And soon, very soon, that sound would invade even the thickest walls Carlos had built around his heart. The following week passed like all the others in the mansion. Carlos left before dawn and returned when the stars were already shining in the sky. Sophia woke up, had breakfast prepared by Beatrice, played alone in her room filled with expensive toys she'd never even asked for, and fell asleep lulled by stories Clara made up before leaving. The routine was mechanical, predictable, empty. But on Thursday morning, something different happened. Clara arrived at the mansion carrying something unusual, a worn fabric bag she guarded with special care. Beatrice was surprised to see her enter the kitchen with the extra bulk, but didn't ask anything. Clara had her mysteries, and everyone there had learned to respect them. After cleaning the living room, the library, and the study Carlos rarely used, Clara went upstairs to organize Sophia's room. The little girl was sitting on the plush rug, surrounded by dozens of imported dolls, but only playing with an old music box she'd found in some forgotten corner of the house. When the lid opened, an awkward ballerina twirled to a melancholic tune. "Good morning, princess." Clara greeted her with that smile that brightened any room. Sophia looked up, and her face lit up immediately. "Auntie Clara, you came." "Of course I came. I promised I would, didn't I?" Clara knelt beside the girl. "What are you doing there?" "This ballerina dances all by herself," Sophia explained with the serious look only 4-year-olds can give. "But she must be sad because she dances without real music." Clara felt something tighten in her chest. That little girl, so small and so perceptive, could see sadness even in inanimate objects. Maybe because she knew that feeling all too well herself. "You know, Sophia, I brought something today that might make your ballerina happier." The girl's eyes widened. "What?" Clara went to her bag and, with reverent care, pulled out a dark wooden guitar. The instrument wasn't new. It had some scratches on the side and the strings were a little worn, but it was treated with such affection that it seemed like a precious heirloom. "Is that a guitar?" Sophia asked, approaching with curiosity. "It's an acoustic guitar, sweetheart. It makes real music, not like the music box." Clara quickly tuned the strings with the dexterity of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "Want to hear?" Sophia nodded so vigorously her blonde curls bounced. Clara smiled, positioned her fingers on the strings, and began to play. The melody that filled the room was sweet and enveloping, like an auditory hug. The notes flowed with a disconcerting ease, and Clara's voice, when it joined the chords, was of an unexpected beauty. She sang a simple song about birds flying free in the sky, about the sun waking up every day to play with the clouds, about dreams hiding under pillows, waiting for the right time to appear. Sophia stood frozen, her mouth slightly open and her eyes sparkling like 2 stars. When the last note dissolved into the air, the girl whispered, "You're magic." Clara laughed, but there was a touch of melancholy in that laugh. "No, sweetheart, I just know how to play a little. Can you teach me?" The question came loaded with a hope so pure, Clara felt a lump in her throat. "Do you really want to learn?" "Yes, I really do." Sofia cupped her little hands together as if making a wish to the universe. Clara looked at that child who lived surrounded by luxury, but starved for attention, and made a decision that would change everything. "Then I'll teach you, but it has to be our secret, okay? Like our own club, a secret music club." Sofia clapped her hands, beaming. That morning, while the rest of the house followed its impeccable and distant routine, something extraordinary began to blossom in the pink room, full of forgotten toys. Clara taught Sofia how to hold the guitar, even though the instrument was too big for her little arms. She showed her how the strings produced different sounds when played, how each note had its own voice. "This one's the chunky one," Clara explained, pointing to the lowest string. "It makes a really deep sound, like a daddy talking." Sofia plucked the string and giggled. "It's true! And this skinny one? This one's high-pitched, like a little bird singing in the morning." The following days brought a silent but profound transformation. Every morning, after Carlos left, Clara went up to Sofia's room, and the two immersed themselves in their secret world of music. The little girl learned quickly, with that natural ease of children discovering something they truly love. But it wasn't just about music. It was about having someone who sat on the floor with her, who looked into her eyes when she spoke, who laughed at her silly jokes, and applauded every small achievement. It was about being seen, being heard, being important to someone. Clara began to teach simple songs, and Sofia memorized the lyrics with impressive speed. Her childish voice, still a bit off-key and wobbly, gained confidence every day. And whenever they finished a practice session, the girl would ask, "More tomorrow, Auntie Clara?" And Clara, even knowing it was dangerous, that she was getting too attached, that eventually it could all fall apart, always replied, "More tomorrow, my love." What Clara didn't tell Sofia was that that guitar had a story. Years ago, when she still had dreams of her own, she had been a musician, not famous, not rich, but talented enough to play in small pubs and venues, to make people stop talking and just listen. Music was her life, her identity, her reason to wake up every day. Until life decided to test her resilience in ways she'd never imagined possible. Bills piled up, opportunities dried up, and Clara found herself forced to choose between her dreams and her survival. The guitar, her faithful companion for so many years, ended up at the back of the cupboard, along with the hopes she could no longer afford to nurture. But now, seeing Sofia hold that same guitar with eyes full of wonder, Clara felt something rebirth within her. It wasn't about fulfilling the dreams she'd lost. It was about helping someone else discover their own. On Friday of that week, something unexpected happened. Sofia was singing alone in her room when Beatriz, the cook, came upstairs to say lunch was ready. The woman stopped in the hallway, surprised by that sweet voice coming through the half-open door. When she entered the room and saw the scene, her jaw dropped. "Well, since when does the little one sing like that?" Clara and Sofia shared a knowing look. "It's our secret club," Sofia explained with seriousness. "But you can join if you want." Auntie Beatriz, a woman in her 50s who'd worked in the house for almost a decade, sat on the bed with tears in her eyes. "I've never seen the little one so happy," she whispered to Clara. "You have a gift, lass." But Clara just shook her head. "The gift is hers. I'm just helping it bloom." While that parallel universe of music and affection grew on the second floor of the mansion, Carlos continued his frantic routine of meetings, negotiations, and business conquests. He arrived home too late to hear his daughter sing, left too early to see her smile when she woke up. Financial reports covered his bedside table, emails filled his sleepless nights, and Sofia remained just another responsibility, well organized by competent staff. Until one Monday, everything changed. Carlos had a meeting unexpectedly cancelled. The Japanese client flying from Tokyo had to postpone their trip due to a typhoon, and for the first time in months, Carlos found himself with a free afternoon. He returned home at 3 p.m., something absolutely unheard of. As he entered the front door, his footsteps echoed in the empty entrance hall. Beatriz wasn't in the kitchen, probably out shopping. The house was silent, but not completely. From the second floor came a sound, a soft guitar melody, accompanied by two voices, one mature and in tune, the other childlike and full of charming effort. Carlos crept up the stairs, guided by that music that seemed to come from another world. He approached Sofia's room, whose door was ajar, and froze. There was Clara, sitting on the rug with the guitar on her lap, playing and singing, and beside her, with a toy microphone in her tiny hands and eyes sparkling with pure happiness, was his daughter Sofia, singing every word as if it were the most important thing in the universe. Carlos's heart stopped. Carlos remained frozen in the hallway, as if his feet had grown roots into the Italian marble floor. His right hand held the leather briefcase he carried everywhere, but his fingers had lost their strength. The briefcase slipped, hitting the floor with a dull thud that echoed through the silent house. The sound instantly interrupted the music. Clara looked up, and her face went pale as she saw Carlos standing in the doorway. The guitar almost slipped from her hands. Sophia, on the other hand, turned with a radiant smile that lit up her whole face. "Daddy, you're home early. Want to hear me sing? Auntie Clara taught me." Carlos remained paralyzed, unable to process the scene he had just witnessed. His daughter, that little girl he barely knew beyond the routine reports Beatrice sent him, was there, vibrating with happiness, talking about music as if it were the most important discovery in the world. "Sophia, he began, but didn't know how to finish the sentence. Clara stood quickly, putting the guitar back in her bag with hurried movements. Her eyes avoided Carlos's, and her hands trembled slightly. "Mr. Carlos, I apologize. I shouldn't have brought instruments into the house without your permission. It was completely inappropriate of me." "No." Sophia clutched the hem of Clara's skirt in desperation. "Auntie Clara can't stop teaching me. She promised we were going to put on a real show." The little girl's voice was filled with panic. That kind of fear children feel when something precious is about to be snatched away from them. Carlos recognized that expression. It was the same one he saw in the mirror on the rare occasions he allowed himself to look beyond numbers and spreadsheets. The fear of losing something valuable. "Sophia, sweetheart, go play in your walk-in robe for a moment," Carlos said with a softer voice than he intended. "I need to talk to Clara, but Daddy now." "Sophia." The girl looked at Clara with tears welling up in her eyes. Then she reluctantly obeyed, dragging her feet across the room until she disappeared behind the door of the giant walk-in robe that looked more like a children's department store. The silence that settled in the room was dense, thick with tension. Clara kept her head bowed, waiting for the inevitable telling off, maybe even dismissal. She knew the invisible boundaries separating employers from employees. She'd crossed all of them. Carlos finally moved, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. When he spoke, his voice was strangely controlled. "How long has this been going on?" "2 weeks, sir," Clara replied softly. "And you're a musician?" The question caught Clara off guard. She looked up, meeting Carlos's gaze for the first time. There was no anger there, just something she couldn't quite decipher. Confusion, maybe, or curiosity. "Was?" she corrected. "I was a musician a long time ago." Carlos walked to the window, observing the perfectly manicured garden downstairs. His mind was working at full speed, processing information, analyzing situations, doing what it did best, solving problems. But this wasn't a business negotiation. It was his daughter. It was something that didn't fit into spreadsheets or contracts. "Why did you stop?" he asked without turning. Clara hesitated. That wasn't a conversation she should be having with her employer, but there was something in the way he asked, a vulnerability hidden beneath the authority that made her answer honestly. "Life happened, Mr. Carlos. Bills don't pay themselves. Dreams don't feed anyone. I had a little girl to raise on my own, and music didn't pay the bills. So, I put away the guitar and learned to clean houses." Carlos turned slowly. "You had?" "My daughter lives with her grandma in the country now. She goes to a good school there. She has a better life than I could give her here in the city. I work to send her money every month, to make sure she has the opportunities I never had." Clara's voice wavered, but she didn't look away. "Sophia reminds me so much of her. Same age, same curiosity. That's why I started teaching. Because I know what it's like to grow up feeling invisible." The words hit Carlos like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came out. How could he argue against a truth he knew all too well himself? Sophia was invisible in her own home. He had made her invisible. "My daughter was happy," he finally said. And there was a mix of admiration and pain in those words. "I walked into this house, and for the first time I can remember, my daughter was genuinely happy, not politely content, not busy with expensive distractions, truly happy." Clara didn't know what to say. She remained silent, waiting. "You know what's most pathetic?" Carlos continued, turning back to the window. "I didn't know she liked music. I didn't know she was interested in singing. I don't even know my daughter's favorite color, Clara. I've built a billion-dollar empire, closed deals across 3 continents, but I can't have a 5-minute conversation with my own 4-year-old daughter." The confession hung in the air like a sentence. The pain in his voice was palpable, real, human. "She loves yellow," Clara said softly. "That's why she wears that little yellow dress whenever she can. And she loves it when I tell stories about stars that come down from the sky to play with children before going home. And she's scared of the dark, But she doesn't tell anyone because she thinks big girls aren't supposed to be scared. Each word was a revelation, a piece of his daughter that Carlos should have known, but didn't. He clenched his fists, fighting against the wave of emotions that threatened to crumble the wall he'd built around his heart. "I don't want you to stop," he said suddenly, surprising himself as much as Clara. "With the lessons, keep teaching my daughter." Clara blinked, confused. "Sir, you're giving her something I can't, something she clearly needs." Carlos turned, his eyes slightly wet. "But I have one condition. Anything, Mr. Carlos. I want to watch. Not every day. I know my schedule won't allow it, but when I can get home early, I want to be here. I want to see my daughter be happy. I want to learn who she really is." Clara felt tears welling up, but she smiled. It would be an honor. The walk-in robe door opened slowly, and Sophia peeked out, her eyes red from silently crying. "Auntie Clara's still going to teach me, Daddy." Carlos knelt, getting down to his daughter's level. The gesture was so unusual, so outside his comfort zone, that Sophia hesitated before approaching. "Yes, princess, she is. And you know what? Your daddy will watch sometimes. Will you let him?" Sophia's face lit up like dawn. "I will, but you have to sit on the floor with us. It's a secret club rule." Carlos laughed, a husky, genuine sound he hadn't made in years. Secret club rule. How many rules does this club have? Lots. Sophia ran and took Clara's hand and Carlos's, trying to join them. "And the first rule is, everyone has to hold hands when the music stops. It's like a magic thank you." Clara and Carlos exchanged a look over Sophia's head, and something passed between them. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't inappropriate, it was mutual recognition. Two people who had sacrificed their dreams for survival, unexpectedly finding a way back through the hopeful eyes of a child. "Then let's do it right," Carlos said, sitting on the plush rug in the room. "How do these lessons work?" Sophia clapped and ran to get Clara's guitar. For the first time in 4 years, Carlos was there, truly present. Clara picked up the instrument and began to play a soft melody. Sophia joined in with her little voice, still insecure, but full of enthusiasm. And Carlos, the ruthless CEO who commanded hundreds of employees, sat on the floor of his daughter's room, tears silently streaming down his face, discovering what it truly meant to be rich. When the music finished, Sophia insisted on the club rule. The three held hands, forming a small circle on the rug, Sophia's warm little hand in his, the unexpected strength in Clara's calloused hand. All of it made something inside Carlos begin to crumble and rebuild at the same time. "Thanks for teaching me, Auntie Clara," Sophia said solemnly. "Thanks for wanting to learn, my love. And thanks, Daddy, for staying. It was the best surprise in the world." Carlos squeezed his daughter's hand carefully, as if she were made of crystal. "Sorry it took me so long to get here, princess." In that moment, in that room filled with expensive, forgotten toys, something fundamental changed. Carlos didn't yet know how he'd balance this with his responsibilities. He had no answers for the challenges that would come, but for the first time in years, he knew exactly where he wanted to be. There on the floor, holding his daughter's hand, while the music still echoed in the air. The journey of transformation had only just begun, and it would be far tougher than any negotiation Carlos had ever faced. The days that followed that transformative afternoon brought subtle but profound changes in the mansion's dynamic. Carlos started coming home at 6 p.m., at least 3 times a week. Something Beatriz commented was a miracle comparable to the multiplication of loaves and fishes. Sophia lived by the clock in the living room, counting down the minutes until she'd hear her dad's car pulling into the driveway. But the real change was happening in that upstairs bedroom, where 3 very different people found common ground through music. It was a rainy Thursday when everything changed again. Carlos had managed to leave a video conference with investors from Germany early. He climbed the stairs with a lightness he hadn't felt in years, eager to attend another session of the secret club, as Sophia insisted on calling it. But as he approached the room, he realized something was different. There was no music, only soft, emotional voices. He stopped at the half-open door and heard Sophia ask, "But doesn't your daughter get sad away from you, Auntie Clara?" There was a long pause. Carlos peered in discreetly and saw Clara sitting on the floor, hugging the guitar to her chest like a shield. Her face was wet with tears. "She does, my love, just like I get sad away from her. But sometimes, when we truly love someone, we have to make difficult choices to give that person a better life." "Like what?" Sophia was sitting very close to Clara, with that serious expression children make when trying to understand grown-up things. "Like working far away to afford a good school, warm clothes, medicine when needed. Her grandma looks after her really well, you know, and every Sunday I call, and we chat. She tells me about school, about her friends, about the books she's reading. How old is she? 9. Her name's Isabella. Carlos felt a pang in his chest. Isabella. Clara's daughter had a name, an age, dreams. While he worried about mergers and acquisitions, this humble woman who cleaned his house was sacrificing time with her own daughter just to survive. I want to meet Isabella, Sophia said with children's brutal honesty. I think we'd be friends. Does she like music too? Clara let out a wet laugh. She loves it, sings better than me, believe it. She has such a beautiful voice that her school teachers are always asking her to perform. So, she takes after you. Sophia clapped her hands. It's like when Dad says I get my stubbornness from him. That's when Carlos decided to step in. He gently knocked on the already open door, and both turned. Clara immediately wiped her tears and tried to compose a professional expression, but Carlos raised a hand. No need to pretend, Clara. Sorry to interrupt a private moment. Daddy, Sophia ran to him. Auntie Clara has a daughter who sings just like us, but she lives far away with Grandma. That's sad, isn't it? Carlos knelt beside his daughter. It's very sad, Princess, very sad indeed. He looked at Clara, who remained sitting on the floor, vulnerable, in a way she'd never allowed herself to be in front of an employer. Carlos made a decision right then. One of those decisions that didn't come from business logic, but from something deeper, more human. Clara, can I ask you a personal question? She hesitated, then nodded. Why did you stop playing professionally? I mean, I've seen you play. You have an extraordinary talent. What happened? Clara looked at the guitar in her hands, running her fingers over the strings without making a sound. When she finally spoke, her voice was loaded with an old pain that had never completely healed. I used to play in pubs and small venues, nothing very glamorous, but it was my life. I earned enough to live. I was happy. When I found out I was expecting Isabella, I was even more motivated. I wanted to show my daughter that it was possible to live from art, to live doing what you love. Sophia sat on Carlos's lap, listening intently, but her dad disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy. And after Isabella was born, things got complicated. I couldn't accept night gigs anymore because I had no one to leave the baby with. The places that hired me during the day paid very little. The bills piled up, the rent fell behind. Until one day, I received an eviction notice. Carlos felt a lump in his throat. He knew numbers, profits, losses, but he had never really thought about what it meant not to have enough money to keep a roof over your head. My mum offered to help, Clara continued, and now tears streamed freely down her face. She said Isabella could live with her in the country, go to school in the small town where she lives. At first, I said no. I couldn't imagine being away from my daughter. But then, Isabella got a serious respiratory infection. She needed expensive medicine, specialist appointments. That's when I realized my love wasn't enough, that my good intentions didn't pay for antibiotics. So you sent her away? Carlos said softly, and it wasn't a question. I did. With my heart broken into 1,000 pieces, I sent my 3-year-old daughter to live with her grandma and came to the big city, where jobs pay better. I learned to clean houses, to iron, to cook. I put music aside because it represented everything I had lost, but I never sold this guitar. Clara clutched the instrument to her chest. It's all I have left from that time, from the person I used to be. Sophia slipped from Carlos's lap and went to Clara, hugging her with the strength only children can put into gestures of comfort. You're a very brave mummy, Auntie Clara. Clara sobbed, hugging the girl back. Sometimes I don't feel brave. Sometimes I feel like the worst mum in the world for not being there to comb her hair in the morning, to help with homework, to sing with her before bed. Carlos watched that scene, and something inside him finally broke. He thought of all the mornings he'd missed with Sophia, all the homework he'd never helped with, all the lullabies he'd never sung. The difference was that Clara had no choice. He did. Clara, he said, and his voice was firm, despite the emotion. How much do you send your mum for Isabella each month? Clara looked at him, confused by the change of subject. Mr. Carlos. That's not he, insisted more gently. $200 is the most I can save from my salary. It covers her school fees, supplies, clothes, part of my mum's house expenses. Carlos did some quick calculations in his head. And if you could send double or triple that, would your mother be able to structure an even better life for Isabella? She could, but I can't. Clara stopped, realizing where the conversation was going. Mr. Carlos, I'm not asking for a raise. That's not why I told you my story. I know, but I'm offering anyway. In fact, it's not just a raise. Carlos stood up, beginning to pace the room, his business mind working at full speed, but this time in service of something greater than profits. You'll continue working here, but not just as a cleaner. I want you to be Sophia's music teacher, officially, with a contract, proper employment, a salary worthy of a qualified educator. Clara's jaw dropped. But I don't have formal musical training. I never went to university. For you have something better than a degree. You have real talent, stage experience, and most importantly, you have a gift for teaching. I've seen the transformation in my daughter. That's priceless. Carlos stopped in front of her. And there's more. I want you to bring Isabella to live here. The room fell into absolute silence. Even Sophia stopped moving. What? Clara whispered. There's a vacant room in the staff quarters. Beatriz lives there alone, and she's always saying the house is too big for just one person. Isabella can live with you. Go to an excellent school here in the city. I won't charge rent, obviously, and with your new salary, you'll be able to rebuild your lives together. Clara began to tremble. Mr. Carlos, it's too generous. I can't accept. It would be taking advantage of our situation. It's not generosity, it's justice. Carlos knelt in front of her, looking into the eyes of the woman who had given his daughter what he couldn't. Presence, attention, unconditional love. You are giving my daughter something priceless. Let me give you the chance to be with yours. Besides, Sophia will love having a friend in the same house. Won't you, princess? Sophia jumped with excitement. Yes, Isabella can sleep here all the time. We can sing together, play together. Please, Auntie Clara, say yes. Clara covered her face with her hands, sobbing in a way that made her whole body shake. Tears of years of sacrifice, of nights crying alone, of missed birthdays, of hugs she couldn't give. And now, unexpectedly, the possibility of rebuilding everything that had fallen apart. I don't know what to say, she mumbled between sobs. Say yes, Carlos replied simply, and let me do something right for once in my life. Clara lifted her tear-streaked face and met Carlos's eyes. There was a man she had judged as distant and cold, now revealing himself capable of a compassion she had never expected to find. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I accept, and thank you so much. Sophia shouted with joy and threw herself into Clara's and Carlos's arms at the same time, creating an awkward but genuine group hug. There, in that room, 3 lives that had been shaped by absence were beginning to heal through presence. When can we pick up Isabella? Sophia asked, practically buzzing with excitement. Clara laughed through her tears. I need to talk to my mum, organize everything. But if Mr. Carlos allows, can I travel next weekend? Use the company car, Carlos offered immediately. And take Sophia with you. I think the 2 of them should meet before they become housemates. I'm going to meet Isabella. Sophia ran in circles around the room. I'm going to meet Isabella. As the little girl celebrated, Carlos and Clara exchanged a look that said more than words. Gratitude, hope, and the recognition that sometimes life's most important changes happen in the most unexpected moments. And so, what had begun as a secret music club was transforming into something much bigger, an unlikely family, united not by blood, but by choices of kindness and second chances. Carlos didn't sleep that night. He stayed in the mansion's study until 3 a.m., not reviewing contracts or analyzing investments, but doing something completely different, planning how to help Clara rebuild her dreams. He opened spreadsheets, not of profits and losses, but of budgets for musical equipment. He researched music, schools, community arts programs, local spaces. With each discovery, he felt more energized, more alive than he had in years of multi-million-dollar deals. When the sun rose, Carlos had a plan. The next morning, he did something he hadn't done in almost 4 years. He had a full breakfast with Sophia, not a hurried 15 minutes, but a whole hour. They talked about everything and nothing. Sophia told him about a dream where she was a star descending from the sky, and Carlos discovered his daughter had an extraordinary imagination. Daddy, you look different, Sophia observed, tilting her head as she chewed a piece of toast with jam. Different how, princess? Brighter? Like when Auntie Clara smiles. The simplicity of the observation touched Carlos deeply. He was different. For the first time in years, he had a purpose that didn't just involve adding more zeros to his bank account. When Clara arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, Carlos was waiting in the living room. She immediately sensed something. Good morning, Carlos. Is something wrong? Sit here, please. I need to talk to you about something important. Clara sat on the edge of the sofa, clearly nervous. Beatriz appeared with fresh coffee and biscuits, then discreetly disappeared. I was thinking about our conversation yesterday, Carlos began. About you having 5 houses to clean. About Isabella, about the dreams you left behind. Carlos, I didn't tell you that for you to feel sorry for me. It's not pity, it's recognition. He leaned forward. Clara, you have an extraordinary talent. I've seen how Sophia has blossomed in just 2 weeks under your guidance. That's not common. And to waste that talent cleaning houses 16 hours a day when you could be transforming lives through music is a crime. It's easy to say that when you have money, Carlos. My reality is different. What if we could change your reality? Clara frowned. I don't understand. Carlos pulled a folder from the coffee table. Last night, I did some calculations. If you left the other 4 houses and dedicated yourself solely to teaching music, how much would you need to earn per month to maintain your current standard of living and continue supporting Isabella? Carlos, this is crazy. I can't just… How much? He insisted. Clara hesitated, then named a figure. Carlos nodded and opened the folder, revealing printed documents. This is a formal proposal. I want you to become a resident here. You'll teach Sophia, of course. But I also want to open the doors to other children in the area. Children of my staff, kids from families who can't afford private lessons. We'll turn the music room I never use into a small studio. Clara looked at the papers, her eyes wide. Are you serious? Completely. The salary I'm offering is 3 times what you mentioned. You'd work 6 hours a day, Monday to Friday. Only here, you'd have weekends free. And what's more, I've included monthly travel for you to visit Isabella. And if you wish, we can bring your mum and daughter to live here in the city. I have a vacant apartment in one of my apartment blocks. Tears began to stream down Clara's face before she could stop them. Why are you doing this? Because you gave my daughter back to me. Because you showed me I was living wrong. Because Carlos paused, wrestling with his own emotions. Because I spent years building an empire, and I forgot to build a life. And if I can use my resources to help you rebuild your dreams, while you transform the lives of other children, then my money will finally have a real purpose. Clara covered her face with her hands, sobbing. Beatriz, who had overheard everything from the kitchen, appeared with tissues and a silent hug. I don't know what to say, Clara managed to articulate through tears. Say yes. Give yourself the chance to dream again. Clara looked at the documents, then at Carlos, and finally nodded. Yes, I accept. Sophia, who had been peeking from the stairs, ran down and threw herself into Clara's arms. Does that mean you'll stay with us forever, Auntie Clara? Clara laughed through her tears. It means we'll have a lot more time to make music together, my love. The transformation began immediately. Carlos cancelled meetings and personally oversaw the renovation of the music room. He hired an architect specializing in studios, bought quality instruments, installed proper soundproofing. In 10 days, the space was ready, a welcoming environment, with guitars, keyboards, microphones, and even a small children's drum kit. Clara left the other houses, not before emotionally thanking the families who had employed her for years. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. A week later, 5 children were enrolled for free lessons. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The change brought unexpected challenges. In the 3rd week of the new arrangement, Carlos came home and found Clara crying in the empty music room. It was 7 p.m. The lessons had already finished. Clara, what happened? She quickly wiped her tears. Sorry, it's nothing. Clearly it's something. You can talk to me. Clara breathed deeply. This morning I got a call from Isabella's school. She's having trouble adjusting. The other kids are bullying her because they found out her mum's a cleaner. Well, was a cleaner. Kids can be cruel. It's not just that. Isabella asked when I was coming to get her. She said she misses me, that she doesn't want to stay with great-grandma anymore. And Clara's voice faltered. I don't know if I made the right choice. Maybe I should have just kept things as they were. At least that was a life I knew. Carlos sat beside her. Change is scary, Clara, especially when it involves the people we love. But you weren't living before, you were just surviving. And Isabella doesn't need an exhausted mum who can barely stand. She needs you whole, present. But she's hurting now. Then bring her here. Now, this weekend. The apartment's ready, furnished, waiting. Your mum and Isabella can move in straight away. Sophia will love having a new friend, and you'll get to see your daughter every day. Clara looked at him with incredulity. Are you serious? When are you going to stop asking me that? Carlos smiled. I've already arranged enrollment at 3 excellent schools near the apartment. You choose which one you prefer. And if Isabella also has musical talent like her mum, she can have lessons here too. I don't know how to thank you. Help me be a better father to Sophia. That's all the thanks I need. That weekend, a car picked up Clara's mum and Isabella from the country. When they arrived at the mansion, Sophia was buzzing with anticipation. The 9-year-old girl who stepped out of the car was shy, with huge eyes and a battered violin in her hand. Are you Isabella? Sophia shouted, running to hug the older girl. Auntie Clara talks about you every day. Do you want to be my best friend? Isabella looked at her mum, who nodded encouragingly, and then she smiled. Yes, please. Carlos watched from a distance, seeing the pieces fall into place. Clara's mum, Mrs. Mariana, a woman with white hair and a warm smile, shook his hand with surprising strength. God bless you, sir, for everything you're doing for my granddaughter and my great-granddaughter. You're a good-hearted man, just a man trying to fix years of wrong choices. Mrs. Mariana. That night, for the first time, the mansion was truly full of laughter, of music, of life. Sofia and Isabella played together, one on guitar and the other on violin, while Clara sang and Carlos filmed everything on his phone, marveling. But in the midst of the joy, his phone rang. It was Patricia, his business partner and ex-wife. We need to talk. Urgently. Carlos stepped out into the garden to take Patricia's call. The night was cool, and he could hear Sofia and Isabella's laughter through the lit-up windows of the living room. For a moment, he hesitated before answering. That voice on the other end of the line had the power to shatter the fragile peace he'd finally built. Patricia, Carlos, we need to meet. Tomorrow, my lawyer will be there. His stomach clenched. Lawyer? What are you talking about? I've been thinking a lot about Sofia, about the choices we made when we separated. Patricia's voice was calculated, cold. I think we made a mistake leaving her custody with you. Carlos felt the world spin. You can't be serious. You left, Patricia. You chose your career in Paris and left me alone with a 6-month-old baby. And clearly that was a mistake on my part. A daughter needs her mother, Carlos, especially now that I've discovered certain irregularities in how you're raising our daughter. Irregularities? Sofia is happy. For the first time in years, she's actually happy. Yes. Being raised by a cleaner, you've turned into, what exactly? An unqualified teacher, a surrogate mother. The venom in Patricia's voice was palpable. My lawyer already has enough documentation to question your judgment. Carlos, a 4-year-old child shouldn't be spending so much time with staff while her father neglects important meetings for what? Music sessions? How do you know about that? The anger rose in Carlos's throat. I have my contacts, and I have photos too. Sofia, with this teacher. You sitting on the floor in situations completely inappropriate for a CEO. Your company is suffering, Carlos. 3 cancelled meetings last week, 2 lost contracts. Your partners are concerned. Carlos clenched his fists. My personal life is not my partner's business. It is when it affects the bottom line, and it is when it involves my daughter. Patricia paused dramatically. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. at my lawyer's office. I suggest you bring yours. We'll discuss a new custody arrangement. One where Sofia lives with me in Paris, and you have supervised visits. The call ended before Carlos could respond. He stood in the garden, trembling not from the cold, but from fury and fear. Patricia couldn't do this, not after 4 years of almost total absence. Not now, when he was finally learning to be a father. When he went back inside, his face must have been terrible, because Clara approached him immediately. Carlos, are you all right? I need to speak with you, privately. They went to the study while Mrs. Mariana took over supervising the girls. Carlos told her everything. Every poisonous word from Patricia, every veiled threat. Clara went pale. This is my fault. I shouldn't have accepted this position. I've complicated your life. No, Carlos held her shoulders firmly. You saved my life, Clara. You saved Sofia. Patricia is doing this because she's always been like this. A woman who wants control, who can't stand to lose. But she's right about one thing. Clara pulled away, hugging herself. I don't have formal qualifications. I didn't finish the conservatory. If a judge looks at that, a judge will see a dedicated woman who transformed a sad child into a radiant one. That's worth more than any degree. You're being too optimistic. The system often favors biological mothers, especially when they have money and expensive lawyers. Clara sat heavily in the chair, and she's right about something else too. Your company is suffering. I saw the emails on your computer when I cleaned your study before. I know you're losing contracts. Carlos ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. A few contracts. Nothing that compromises the company for now. But if Patricia uses that against you, she can paint a picture where you're being irresponsible, where you're putting Sofia at risk because of her, because of you, because of impulsive decisions motivated by an employee. The silence that settled was heavy. Carlos knew Clara was right. Patricia was a strategist, always had been. She waited for the perfect moment to strike, when he was vulnerable, when he had something precious to lose. So, what do you suggest? He asked, dreading the answer. That I leave. That you go back to your routine. Prove you're a stable, responsible father. Sophia will survive without the music lessons. No, Sophia's voice echoed through the half-open study door. The little girl was there, tears streaming down her face, holding Isabella's hand. Auntie Clara can't leave, can she? Clara rushed to Sophia and knelt. My love, it's complicated. Sometimes adults have to make difficult choices. But you promised. You promised we'd put on a real show. You promised you'd teach me more songs. Sophia's voice was filled with pain. That kind of betrayal children feel when adults break promises. Carlos watched the scene, feeling his heart break. He had spent years absent, letting Sophia be raised by staff. And now that he had finally built something real, Patricia appeared to destroy everything. Sophia's right. Isabella's voice, usually timid, sounded surprisingly firm. You can't give up, Mum. Not again. Clara looked at her daughter in surprise. Isabella, you gave up the conservatory for me. You gave up music for me. You spent 9 years cleaning houses for me. The 9-year-old girl's eyes were wet. I always knew, I always felt it, and I always felt guilty. But now, for the first time, I've seen you truly happy. I've seen you shine, and I won't let you give up again. Not for me, not for anyone. The girl's words dropped like bombs into the room. Clara covered her mouth, sobbing. Your talent is worth fighting for, Mum, and Sophia deserves to have you in her life, just like I always have. Isabella hugged Sophia. We both deserve it. Carlos felt something shift inside him. Those two children, with their innocent wisdom and brutal honesty, were showing the way. Isabella's right, he said with a firm voice. We're not backing down. We're not letting Patricia win through intimidation. Clara looked up, still crying. But what if you lose, Sophia? I'd never forgive myself, and I'd never forgive myself if I let you sacrifice your dreams again. Not for me, not for anyone. Carlos knelt beside the three of them. We'll fight this together, as a family. But we're not a family, Clara whispered. No. Sophia took Clara's hand and Carlos's, joining them as they did after the songs. But we do this. We look after each other. We love each other. Isn't that family? In the simple way only children can, Sophia had summarized everything. That night, Carlos didn't sleep. He worked until dawn, not running from his responsibilities, but organizing them. He sent emails to his partners, explaining that he would make adjustments to his schedule, but would not compromise the company. He scheduled critical meetings, delegated what could be delegated, and prioritized what truly mattered. At 7 a.m., he called the best family lawyer he knew. Marcus, I need you, urgently. For the 10 a.m. meeting, Carlos arrived prepared. Patricia was impeccable, as always, in an Italian designer suit and perfect makeup. Her lawyer, a middle-aged man with shark-like eyes, already had a pile of documents on the table. Carlos, good you came. Let's get straight to the point. Patricia crossed her legs, the picture of confidence. I want full custody of Sophia. You can visit her on holidays under supervision? No. The word came out simple, firm, with no room for negotiation. Patricia blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. Sorry, I said no. You abandoned your daughter when she was 6 months old. You didn't send birthday presents, didn't make video calls, didn't ask how she was. Carlos opened his own folder. I have 4 years of records proving your complete absence. And now you want custody? Why, exactly? Patricia's lawyer tried to intervene. My client was building her career. Your client made a choice. I respect that choice, but I won't let her destroy Sophia's life now, just because she suddenly remembered she has a daughter. She's being raised by an unqualified employee. Patricia slammed the table. I'm being helped by a talented educator who brought happiness back to my daughter. And that educator has more love and dedication in her little finger than you've shown in 4 whole years. Marcus, Carlos's lawyer, placed documents on the table. We have witness testimonies, medical records showing the child's positive development, and videos demonstrating a healthy emotional bond. Furthermore, we have Miss Patricia's complete history of absence. You can't prove negligence on my part, Patricia retorted, but her voice had lost its confidence. We don't need to. We just need to prove that Sophia is better off where she is, and that will be very easy. The meeting stretched for 3 tense hours. Threats were made, threats were countered, but in the end, when it became clear that Carlos wouldn't back down and that Patricia had no solid legal ground, an agreement was reached. Supervised visits for Patricia, 1 month of holidays per year, but custody remaining with Carlos. When he left the office, Carlos was exhausted but relieved. The battle wasn't entirely won, but he had gained crucial ground. Arriving home, he found Sophia, Isabella, and Clara in the music room. They were rehearsing something with Clara, playing the guitar, and the two girls singing in imperfect but beautiful harmony. When they saw him, Sofia dropped everything and ran. "Daddy, is Auntie staying?" Carlos hugged his daughter tightly. "Yes, princess. Nobody's leaving." Clara met his gaze over Sofia's head, and there was gratitude, and something deeper. In those eyes, something neither of them was ready to name yet. "Now," Carlos said, sitting on the floor, "I hear you're preparing a show. Can I watch the rehearsal?" And for the first time in days, music filled that house again. Not perfectly, not professionally, but with something far more valuable: true love. But outside, Patricia, sitting in her car, looked at the mansion with calculating eyes. This wasn't over. Not yet. 3 weeks had passed since the meeting with Patricia. The house had found a new rhythm, an imperfect but genuine harmony. Carlos completely restructured his schedule, delegating responsibilities and prioritizing what truly mattered. His company not only survived the change but prospered in unexpected ways as he began to lead with more balance and mental clarity. The music classes grew. Now there were 12 children, kids of his employees, neighbors, families who had heard about that magical teacher who taught not just music, but also self-confidence and joy. The music room buzzed with laughter, off-key notes, and small daily miracles, but Sofia had a bigger dream. "Daddy," she said one Saturday morning, as they had breakfast together, a tradition Carlos would never miss now. "I want to put on a real show, with a stage, microphones, everything, like the people on TV." Carlos exchanged glances with Clara, who was making juice in the kitchen. "A show? Is that serious?" "Very serious." Sofia slammed her little hand on the table with determination. "Auntie Clara says when you learn something beautiful, you have to share it with the world. And I want to share." Clara came closer, drying her hands on her apron. "Carlos, I didn't want to put that idea in her head without talking to you first. But she's right." "She is," Carlos finished, smiling. "Then let's put on a show." "A real show?" Sofia's eyes lit up like stars. "Really, Daddy? Truly? Truly. How about we do it in the garden? We can invite the families of the other children, some friends. It'll be our first official concert." Sofia jumped from her chair and hugged her dad with such force she almost knocked him over. Clara watched the scene with tears in her eyes, marveling at the transformation of this man who, just over a month ago, barely knew his own daughter. Preparations began immediately. Carlos hired a company to set up a small stage in the garden with a professional sound system and proper lighting. Clara worked tirelessly with the children, creating a repertoire of 5 songs that blended children's tunes with original arrangements she composed herself. Isabella, with her violin, would be the support musician. Mrs. Mariana sewed simple but beautiful dresses for the girls. Beatriz planned a feast worthy of celebration. The entire mansion was caught up in the magic that was being created. But 2 days before the show, something unexpected happened. Carlos received a call from an unknown number. It was a music producer named Fernando, who had heard about the project through one of the parents of the children who worked in the entertainment industry. "Mr. Carlos, I know this might seem strange, but I'd like to attend the show. I'm interested in seeing Clara's work. I've heard remarkable things about her method." Carlos, suspicious but intrigued, accepted. He didn't mention anything to Clara to avoid creating expectations. Show day arrived with a perfect blue sky. The garden was transformed, with the stage set up, chairs arranged in a semicircle, and colorful decorations. Sofia had insisted on helping to choose. 50 people attended: parents, staff, a few of Carlos's friends, and, sitting discreetly at the back, Fernando, the producer. When Clara stepped onto the stage for the introduction, she was visibly nervous. It had been years since she'd performed in public. Carlos, sitting in the front row with Mrs. Mariana, sent her an encouraging smile. "Good afternoon, everyone," Clara began, her voice trembling slightly. "A few months ago, I was just a cleaner with dreams tucked away in the back of a cupboard. Today, thanks to Carlos's generosity and the unconditional love of some incredible children, I'm here doing what I've always loved, sharing music and joy." She paused, looking at Sofia, who was waiting in the makeshift wings. "This show is about second chances. It's about never being too late to start over. And it's about the transformative power of a child who decides to believe in you." The lights dimmed, except for a spotlight that illuminated the center of the stage. Sofia emerged, dressed in a yellow dress that shone like the sun, holding the microphone with small but steady hands. Clara began to play, and the first note from the guitar was pure, crystal clear, perfect. And then Sofia began to sing. Her voice was still childlike, still had technical imperfections, but there was something in it that touched the soul. She sang about stars descending from the sky, about dreams living within the heart, about love that healed wounds. Every word was sung with a brutal sincerity, that emotional honesty only children possess. The other children joined for the second song, forming an imperfect but moving choir. Isabella played her violin with her eyes closed, lost in the music. Clara conducted everything with silent mastery, her talent finally free to shine. Carlos couldn't stop crying. He looked around and saw he wasn't alone. Parents discreetly wiped their eyes. Mrs. Mariana was openly sobbing. Even Beatriz, always so composed, had tears streaming down her face. In the fourth song, something unexpected happened. Sophia stopped singing mid-phrase, looked at the audience, and spoke directly to her dad. "Daddy, this song is for you." Clara started a soft chord, and Sophia sang in her little voice. "Before, you didn't see me. You were far away, didn't know. But you came back to me, and now I can see you. Love lives right inside. No need to search or roam. Just open up your heart and let the love come home." The simple lyrics, obviously written with Clara's help, completely broke Carlos. He no longer tried to hide his tears, letting them fall freely as his daughter sang about forgiveness, about new beginnings, about the journey they had taken together. When the last song finished, the silence that followed was sacred. For a moment, no one moved. Then, one person started to clap, then another, and another. In seconds, the entire garden erupted in deafening applause. The children bowed, as Clara had taught them. Sophia ran straight into her dad's arms, and Carlos hugged her as if she were the most precious thing in the universe, because she was. "I love you, Daddy. Thanks for staying. I love you, Princess. Thanks for teaching me how." As the crowd began to disperse for the feast Beatriz had prepared, Fernando approached Clara. "Teacher Clara, my name is Fernando Silva. I'm a music producer and director of a community music school here in the city." Clara tensed immediately. "Mr. Silva, if you're here to criticize the children's lack of formal technique, I'm here to offer you a position," he interrupted softly. "We need teachers who teach not just notes, but soul, who transform lives, not just voices. You have a rare gift, Clara, a gift you don't learn in universities." Clara was speechless. The position comes with a competitive salary, complete creative freedom, and the opportunity to expand your work to hundreds of underprivileged children in the city. And before you ask, no, you don't need a formal degree. Your work speaks for itself. Carlos appeared beside Clara, having overheard everything, and she can continue giving private lessons here too. That's non-negotiable. Fernando smiled. "Of course. In fact, I'd love for Sophia and some of these children to participate in our annual recital. With your permission, of course." Clara covered her mouth, trying to process. Sophia, who had run over to them, clutched Clara's skirt. "Are you going to say yes, Auntie Clara? Please?" I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Carlos encouraged. "Your dreams have come back, Clara. Don't let them go again." Clara looked at Sophia, then at Isabella, who watched from a distance with a proud smile, then at Mrs. Mariana, who nodded enthusiastically, and finally at Carlos, the man who had risked everything to defend her presence in their lives. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I accept." The sun began to set, painting the sky gold and pink. The garden was filled with laughter, with music played by children experimenting with instruments, with animated conversations, and the delicious smell of Beatriz's food. Carlos stood in the middle of it all, watching. 3 months ago, this house was a silent mausoleum of empty success. Today, it was a vibrant, chaotic home, full of life and love. Sophia ran to him once more, tugging his hand. "Daddy, come on, Auntie Clara's going to teach everyone to dance." And Carlos, the CEO who commanded a billion-dollar company, who closed international deals and moved millions, allowed himself to be dragged by his 4-year-old daughter into an impromptu circle where children and adults danced without rhythm, but with pure joy. As he spun Sophia in his arms, his eyes met Clara's, who was playing guitar in the center of the circle. Something passed between them, a deep recognition. It wasn't romance, at least not yet. It was something more fundamental. Mutual gratitude for having saved each other from lives that were prosperous, but empty. That night, after everyone had left, and Sophia finally fell asleep hugging her toy microphone, Carlos and Clara sat on the garden steps, watching the stars. "Thank you," Carlos said simply. "For what?" "For showing me that success without meaning isn't success. For giving me my daughter back. For teaching me that sometimes the most valuable things in life come wrapped in packages we'd never expect." Clara rested her head on his shoulder, an intimate but innocent gesture. Thank you to you for believing I was worth the risk, for giving me the chance to be who I was before the world convinced me to give up. Never give up again, Clara. Promise? I promise. If you promise the same, I promise. And there, under a sky full of stars, two broken adults found not just healing, but also purpose. A cleaner who became a musician again, a millionaire who learned to be a father, and a 4-year-old girl who, without knowing it, orchestrated a miracle with nothing but hope and a song. A few months later, the mansion's music room had a new sign on the door: Sophia and Clara's Music Institute, where dreams find melodies. And inside, every day, children from all over the city learned that no matter where you come from or how much money you have, music and love are universal languages that can transform any life willing to listen. Carlos never missed another performance. Patricia eventually gave up the legal battles and returned to Paris, visiting Sophia only on holidays, where she slowly began to rebuild a relationship with her daughter on the child's own terms. Isabella became the first violinist of the city's youth orchestra. Mrs. Mariana ran the institute with a firm but loving hand. Beatriz discovered a talent for singing and began lessons with Clara. And Sophia. Sophia grew up knowing she was loved unconditionally, that her dreams mattered, and that sometimes miracles come disguised as improbable encounters between people who needed each other exactly. Because in the end, that wasn't a story about a millionaire and a cleaner. It was a story about the redemptive power of love, about second chances, and about how a single child with a pure heart can change the destiny of everyone around them.